Welcome to ESMoA, everyone. My name is Holly M. Crawford. I'm the Manager of Education, and I'm also proud to have provided curatorial assistance for the show that you're sitting in right now called EAT. And also just to remind everyone that ESMoA will be open till 5 p.m. today, so you're welcome to stay after the talk to see the artworks in this show. I want to thank all of our speakers for being here today, including our wonderful moderator, Alba Maria Vasquez, and I'm going to share more about her in just a moment. And I just also wanted to share that in addition to our many programs and events at ESMoA, admission is always free. So even if you need to leave today, come back during our open hours. I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're on is originally Tongva land, and to honor the original stewards. Okay. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alba. So Alba Maria Vasquez is the Healthy Neighborhood Market Network, HNMN, Program Director for the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. In this role, Alba oversees the administrative and programmatic activities involved with HNMN, including program planning and evaluation, reporting, and technical assistance to store owners. She also serves as a key contributor for the Compra Foods program, a produce delivery service in collaboration with the Leadership for Urban Renewal Network and API Forward Movement. Alba has worked towards creating more livable and healthy communities through participatory planning and advocating for social, economic, and spatial justice in the built environment. For 3 years, she worked at National Health Foundation, where she oversaw their nutrition, education, obesity prevention grant, and was involved in market makeover work with youth in South LA. She then led community wellness programs at Cedars-Sinai. Alba received her Master's of Urban Regional Planning from the University of California, Los Angeles, where she worked on various community mapping projects, including Cultivate Los Angeles, a comprehensive group report on urban agriculture in Los Angeles County. Alba holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology from the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Thank you, Holly. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of our speakers today. So I'll start from the end of the row with Rebecca Amos. In 2005, Rebecca Amos and her sister, Susie Cameron, founded MUSE School in California. MUSE is the first school in the country to be 100% solar-powered, zero waste, and with 100% organic plant-based lunch program. Based on the engaging and relevant MUSE values and curriculum, they aim to franchise the model worldwide through MUSE Global. Next up. Next up, we have Ron Finley, most widely known as the Gangsta Gardener. Ron Finley started a horticultural revolution where he transformed the barren parkway in front of his south central Los Angeles home into an edible oasis in 2010. Ron's goal was simple: bring healthy food to an area where there was none, making him see firsthand how gardens build community and change people's lives. His unexpected tactics have made him one of LA's most widely known activists. Based in Los Angeles, Ron is now working on the Ron Finley Project, speaking at global conferences and in classrooms regularly, spreading his gardening gospel wherever he's invited. He is on the curatorial team of the Destination Crenshaw Project. It's a 1.3-mile outdoor art and cultural experience celebrating Black Los Angeles. He is also selected as one of the national artists for the Public Art Challenge Fertile Ground Project by Bloomberg Philanthropists in Jackson, Mississippi, to only name a few. All starting from one seed, Ron started a horticulture revolution right in his parkway. Next, we have Karla Vasquez. Karla T. Vasquez is a curator of SalviSoul, a food justice advocate, a food historian, and a proponent for healthy food accessibility in low-income communities. Karla holds a degree in journalism and completed her culinary training at the New School of Cooking. She specializes in community building, nutrition education, and food history. Karla has worked with Hunger Action Los Angeles Food Policy Council, Vela, The Edible Apartment, Champions for Change, With Love Market and Cafe, and other social justice organizations where she has used her skills to organize outreach efforts, manage projects, and lead community health initiatives. Karla has contributed to Eater LA, LA Taco, We Are Cocina, and other publications. She's been interviewed by KCRW Good Food, Vice Munchies, ABC, and has been featured in Fierce by Me Too, and Zócalo, Public Square. Most recently, she was the LA Food Bowl Festival event coordinator at the Los Angeles Times. Her initial inspiration for SalviSoul was to honor the lives of the women in her family. Great, well, thank you everyone for being here. Now we're gonna go ahead and get into questions. We have prepared some questions for the panel, and there will be an opportunity at the second half of the time that we have here for everyone to open up and have an opportunity to ask questions for the panelists. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the first set of questions that really go over how food histories are shaping food justice initiatives today and in the future. So the first question is, what is your earliest food memory? And I'm gonna go ahead and ask Karla to start off with that, and if she could hand over the mic as we continue.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me.
They couldn't get 4 mics.
One. I think that the first memory I have is honestly eating watermelon. My family was living in South Central, and that was just what we were doing, enjoying a lazy summer day, eating watermelon. And I think that that's honestly like food memory attached to all these experiences is why food memory is so important. But yeah, that's probably the first food memory I have.
First of all, let's start this with this whole food justice and social justice. There is none. So let's call it what it is. You work in food injustice. That's what I work in. I work in social injustice. Words matter. Because if food justice, we wouldn't have to do what we do. So it doesn't exist. So we need to change that word so people see it, injustice. Every time we say it, that's what we need to say. My first memory, I don't know, when you asked that question, it was two things. It was one thing that led me into, first it was breakfast, Sunday breakfast, pancakes, that my mom cooked. We used to have these hell of a breakfasts with, pancakes and waffles and fried chicken and the whole nine, But also in high school, when you asked that question, what came to my mind? It popped up that I used to pass by the home ec class in the 1800s. They didn't, that's what they called it. And I had, they used to have pies and cakes sitting in the window, and you smell it, and I said, okay, I need to be down with that. I need some of that in my life. And so I went, tried to get my elective changed, like, hey, I want to be in the cooking class. And the counselor told me, you can't do that because that's for girls. And I'm like, damn. So, 11 or 12, I don't know. I don't know where I pulled this from, but I said, well, aren't most men chefs? What do I know, man? And she said, you're right. And long story short, because of that, they started a boys' cooking class at Horseman Junior High School in South Central, and I got my hot cookies and hot cakes. So that's a serious food memory for me.
I like that. What I think about is I grew up in Oklahoma, and my grandmother, my mom grew up in Louisiana, so we would take these trips down to Louisiana. And it would take us about 12 hours to drive, and there were 6 of us. I had 5 siblings. And I remember we would drive up into my grandmother's driveway, and it was about, it'd be like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And she would have okras and tomatoes cooking, cornbread, spinach or collard greens, and all of this amazing food. And I just remember that was always a big part of our heritage, was going down there and learning about Southern cooking. And I would say that's one of my memories. Another memory, and I'm going to share a couple just because you did. So, you know, I used to watch Mr. Rogers a lot. And when I was in kindergarten, I was in a half-day kindergarten program, and my mom would make me olive sandwiches, and it would be, really, really good. And I love olives to this day. And so it was bread.
That must be a white thing.
I don't know. It could be. It could be. Olive sandwiches.
Kind of bread.
Well, probably wheat bread, you know, with mayonnaise. And my mom would slice the olives, and she would put them nicely on the bread. And to this day, I love olives. Yeah.
Olives. Oh,
Yeah, mayonnaise.
Okay.
Because you had to have something for it to stick to.
Make something that tastes
Right. Right. Yeah.
good.
Hey, I had to think a lot about these memories. Anyway, those were a couple of my memories. So, you know, he's going to make fun of me the whole time, probably. I'm going to move. All right, pass it down.
Well, I love this organic conversation. I know we have a set of questions, but if we could keep this... Exactly, which is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. For sure, for sure.
You don't know these questions. I want you guys to know that. So it is kind of organic, but you know, people try to send you questions and they want you to answer. I'm like, I don't want to be prepped for that.
Totally cool. So with that in mind, well, you know what? Because I strongly agree with you, and I think it is important for us to feed off of what can organically happen. I'm gonna share my food story. That wasn't something that was part of this conversation, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I think it's important. So I was born in El Salvador, relatable a little bit with Karla, and I came to this country at a very young age, and my parents, with them, brought their cultural practices that were very non-traditional to people here in the US. So my earliest memory is my mom going to a chicken farm in near El Monte, in La Puente, just a couple miles from downtown Los Angeles, and she would buy a live chicken, and she would grab the chicken by the neck, it was alive, grab the chicken by the neck and just do a quick snap while it was alive. And the whole point of that, to me that was normal. And, you know, stuff it inside of a hot pot, and then I was always the one that was in charge of pulling out all the feathers. And I hated the smell of that. I don't know if any of you have been in front of that type of chicken. I hated the smell. But one thing that my mom taught me is that, you know, a chicken, like a live chicken, is sacrificing its life to be our nutrition. And so with that, we had to make sure that that's how my family, it's part of our culture. And so that's how we justified it culturally. And so one thing that she made sure is for us to make sure to appreciate every single part of the chicken. And so to this day, my favorite food is chicken feet. So I love chicken feet. I love chicken feet. I don't know what it is.
So in the spirit of just wanting to be really present, I think when you asked that question, that watermelon memory came to the surface, but just to highlight something that Ron said about food injustice and how it relates to our own personal narratives, one of these snacks that my mom always prepared for me and I asked for were pickled onions, pickled red onions. And as a child, I'd be watching my Sábado Gigante, which is a variety show on Telemundo, and I'd be eating my pickled onions with carrots. And everyone always said, oh, that's kind of an odd snack for a child. This is what we ate. We have a lot of pickled foods in Salvadoran cuisine, which is, you know, where I'm from. And it wasn't until I started going to school and when I was a student at LAUSD that I stopped having that craving for those vegetables and for these natural foods. I started craving that chocolate milk in a bag, the coffee cape that was almost as big as the container, and that was the breakfast. I mean, if someone gave me some, I'd totally take it. But when we're talking about all these memories and how they kind of tie into this braid of what is our food narrative, our food justice, and our food memory. That is definitely one of the things, one of the foods that's right in that intersection right there. And I really appreciate Ron kind of adding that lens and perspective, because it's definitely been a part of the reason why I know many of us are here, so.
So then leading to that question, if there's anything in the bio that we didn't share that you'd like to add about what it is that you do.
So I started a project called SalviSoul, and Salvi is a short word for Salvadoran Americans. I was born in El Salvador, and my family migrated here because they were refugees fleeing the Civil War, which happened from 1980 to 1992. And we arrived in this country in '88, and trying to figure out what my culture was has always been a point of tension for me. Making sure that I stay near to it has always been a fear. Like, what if I lose Salvadoran culture? What if I don't speak enough English or Spanish? I'm going to forget everything. And so SalviSoul came because I realized that all the points where I felt really Salvadoran was at the table. And it was as I was getting all of this nourishment from the pickled onion, pupusas, chicken feet, all of these wonderful dishes, as that was strengthening my body, the nourishment of these stories that my parents would share at the table were nourishing this part of my soul that were so hungry to learn about the country I had to leave because we had no choice. And so because for the Salvadoran community, traveling to El Salvador is not always an option. There's family separation, there's cost, there's immigration, huge immigration hurdles that we have to go through to visit our homeland. Food is the way by which we go home. And so I wanted to make sure to document them. And so I've interviewed 25 women who are all Salvadoran women. And I've documented their recipes. But as I started documenting the recipes of my grandmother, I realized that as she's cooking, these stories of her childhood start coming up. And these stories about, who we are and what's our roots start surfacing. And I thought, this is I would do a complete disservice to the culture, to these women who have survived so much, if I just documented a measurement of a spice and how to treat it. It just felt like a really empty, it felt empty. Just empty. And so I decided that I would write a cookbook that would include those recipes and include those stories, because it's about those two forms of nourishment. And so, one of the things that I also like to mention is that I have a chronic illness. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And so does anyone know anything about type 1 diabetes or chronic illnesses? They all have to do with food. And food, as I mentioned, was my haven, right? So it was a complete devastating chapter in my life, because I felt like this one final frontier of my culture and my heritage was being threatened by my health. And then, with talking to doctors who had good intentions are not worth much, I will say that, because there was a lot of ignorance in how to advise me how to eat my food. So I would say, hey, what about tortillas? What about plátanos? Plantains is a huge ingredient in Salvadoran cuisine. And I had doctors say to me, it'd be best if you stayed away from that. It'd be best if you don't eat this. This is not good for you. Which was a huge tragic feeling of loss. And so, that's something that definitely just pushed me. And I realized if no one documents this, I have to do this. And the last thing I'll say is that there are currently only 2 Salvadoran cookbooks available. If you go on Google or Amazon and you try to find books, you'll get 2. First one was printed in 2010, which is not that long ago. And then the second one was printed in 2014, which is also not that long ago. So there's a huge gap of documentation, and a lot of these recipes have, you know, stories, technology, the science of making masa is very, very precious to the Mesoamerican community. So those are all things that have really inspired me to do this work.
So there's no Salvadoran cookbooks from El Salvador? Is that what you're saying too? You're saying in the whole culture there's only 2 books?
Right now, there are cookbooks that are in El Salvador. However, they are little booklets,
okay.
and you can only purchase them if you're in El Salvador. So now, if you are Puerto Rican, Colombian, Mexican, and you go to Amazon, you have pages and pages. And one thing I will also say, that the Latin American person has a transnational identity.
Who's to blame for that? Exactly, thank you. Your cousins.
So having access to those recipes, it's great if they're in El Salvador. They should be accessible, just like a lot of different cultural assets are accessible.
Well, what's not in my, the part you read, the bio, it's not my bio. What I do is not really about food. Food is like the forest for the trees to me. It's like what I do is about freedom. You know, freedom from an oppressive system. You know, from food to education to prisons to opportunity. And I'm trying to change that. No, but I don't tell people that. It's like, because I have this thing, you know, if you're in what we're in is a war. We're in a battle for our lives. You know, everything around us, especially if you're of color, everything around you is killing you. Everything, you know. And it's, you know, people say, well, when you're successful, I said, I'm successful right now. I woke up this morning and I'm black and nothing hurts that bad, you know? So that's my measure. I want people to see that a lot of these things are also self-imposed. A lot of the change, a lot of the prison is self-imposed because of what we believe. We pledge allegiance. We pledge allegiance to what? You know, what do we pledge allegiance? Not to air. That's for damn sure. It's the single most important thing to your life, not to your parents, not to soil. You know, so what I'm trying to do is change people's values of what's truly important, you know, and it ain't the stuff that they have us chasing. You know, everything in the society where we are now is in the future. Everything we do is in the future. We go to school for what? Not for right now. We go to school for the future. You know, success. You're chasing success. So when do you know when you're successful? You know, because there's always, oh, he has more shit than me. Oh, damn. You know, so you are you, and he's more successful. I want to be as successful. So nothing right now that we do, that we've been trained to do, is present. We don't appreciate the present that it is. So I'm trying to bring that back. I'm trying to change values to all this silly that they got us valuing, that they benefit from, you know, from diamonds and the rest of that. You know, who wins when you buy a diamond? You know, just brilliant marketing that they did with this whole diamond campaign for 50 years. Spend 3 months' salary. No, it's 4 months now, Mike. Spend 4 months' salary for her engagement ring. Where'd that come from? Jesus, I mean, you know, Buddha, and everybody followed it. And the brilliant thing that nobody knows about that advertising is they don't even say what they really want you to buy. That's what's brilliant about it. They want you to buy a wedding ring, but they don't even say it. And so how do we make what we do that insidious, but that sexy at the same time? That people, and then, oh, it's not big, your ring's not big enough. And then it's like that. And I tell these kids, those stones come out of the ground. The ground, the soil is the mother. That's what you should be respecting. That's what we turn into. So mine is a little deeper than food, you know. But yeah, I want people, you know, from the education, the miseducation system, whereas I had the opportunity to see my kids went to, you know, a private school in Brentwood, and I went to a public school, and I go to public schools now, and I see the difference, and it's vast, and it shouldn't be, you know, especially in this society, especially with all this money. So that's what it's not everything's connected. You know, people are like, how do you go from design to growing food? You know, I'm like, where do you think fabric come from? Where do you think color come from? Where do you think it's like, and why'd you start growing food? I'm like, cause it's food, you clown. Why would you think I start growing food? You know, and there was nowhere to get any in my neighborhood. So that's really what mine's about.
Thank you. Something not in my bio is this question. How many of you in this room are under the age of 18? 3? There's 3 of you in here? So I don't ask that question out loud a lot, and it's not in my bio. My thing is, we're the adults, and we're sitting up on this panel, and we're talking about values and cooking and food and memories, and really it's about the young people who have the memories. And what I want is to instill a food memory in these kids to be able to go out and to be empowered and to be free to, you know, you use the word freedom, but to be able to use this ability to really make a difference, because we can sit up here and talk, you know, about what we're doing. But what I'd like to see us do is really listen to the students more. And there's a couple people here from the school, few people here from the school where I work, and I'm always saying, where's the voice of the kids? How are we getting the kids involved? What are they doing? Instead of us saying, well, we think you should do this and this and this and this. So in my bio, that's what I want is, where are the kids? How are we listening to them? How are we empowering them? How are we freeing them to make a difference around food, around history, so that they can sit in a seat like this one day and say, my history is that I used to do these things at my school around sustainability, around food, around climate, around the rainforest, you know. So that's what I have to say.
Great, thank you. And I think this is a great follow-up question to everyone's last response. It is why, yeah, but then it makes sense. I mean, we obviously did this in an order. So all of you talked about what type of changes you want to see and how you want to educate youth and how you want to really inform and bring more to light and bring justice to what is currently not there. Ultimately, the way that I see it is like food inequities, you know, that currently exist. And so I'm interested in knowing if each of you see policy as a way to address some of these inequities or injustices, and if not, you know, what type of changes or what can happen, and if you do see it, what type of policies?
I definitely see policy being a huge part of my work. I think my identity, my being from El Salvador, is taking up a politicized identity. The fact that I'm here, the fact that I grew up with a green card, my life already becomes political. And I remember when I was in high school and I had to was trying to figure out what major I would pick in college. And some people were choosing majors that were, you know, really beautiful, like creative writing. And all I could think about was poli-sci. I have to do poli-sci because poli-sci is how I understand how to advocate for my community and how to make sure that we don't suffer abuses, suffer exploitation. My grandmother worked at a sweatshop. My father worked at Farmer John under very difficult conditions. I remember him taking shots of whiskey all the time just to warm up his body after he had been working 16-hour shifts in a freezer. So my identity is politicized. If you start there, you start to realize that the tools that will help you grow is policy. Policy is there for you. Policy, it won't be there for you. And then as you think about food history, there's policy all over food history. The reason that we have certain spices is because there were laws that helped trade that spice to get to this country because it was taken from another culture to bring here. So I definitely see a policy as something that you, that you have to kind of look at things through a lens. And one of my favorite works that I feel really inspired by is by Upton Sinclair and his book, The Jungle. Have any of you read it? It's a book I read almost every year because I come back to it, and the stories of the people in that book, it's just completely inspiring how writing a story about immigrants from Poland, I think it's Poland, right? And their experiences in Chicago in the meat district and how they were completely exploited and abused is what changed policy in this country to regulate how meat is produced and how it's manufactured. So policy is a darling word that I think we should all get really comfortable with and really explore.
Well, I was thinking about a conversation I had with my mom this morning. She's 88 years old and she lives in Oklahoma. And she really despises our current administration. And last year she fell and broke her pelvis. And she is this amazing yogi, and she's incredible. And when she fell, the paramedics came and they asked her who the president was. And she said, "I am not going to say his name. I am not going to say his name. I'll spell it for you, but I'm not going to say it." And, so I think about my mom, and she said this morning, we were talking about just all of the different candidates and what their platforms are for running as a Democratic candidate. And there's so many. And there are some young ones, and there are some ones that represent some really amazing platforms. And she said, all I want is to still be alive and not have him as a president. And it was a really interesting thing for me to hear her say that because, she's 88, and I keep thinking she's going to live forever. And so as you ask that question, once again, I think about our youth, and I think about young people, and I think about who is out there, and what is politics, and what's happening, and what is policy, and again, we have to galvanize the young people because there are a lot of old people sitting in the world of policy and politics, but there's a lot of young people now, and a lot of diversity, and people that are wanting to do good things. And I think we have to really, really get our young people aware of this. And it starts young. It's not us adults who are, but who are thinking about the good things. I think our young people are the ones where the answers are. You want this?
Policy. Yeah, we all need to be involved in it. A lot of while the reason I'm sitting here is because of policy. I was able to change policy, without trying. Basically, I got the law changed in LA where you can grow food on the parkways, just strip of grass right before you get to the street in the city of LA. But, basically because I embarrassed the city of Los Angeles. It wasn't because they saw it as something that was needed. I literally had an arrest warrant for my, because I planted carrots on the street and to give to people. I like the jackets. I said, imagine me going to jail, for planting carrots, Imagine it's like, yo, what you in for, dude? Hey, dude, I planted carrots, back up, It's like, it's like, just imagine, so it's like, it's just crazy. So basically, and people now, they call me, what should I do? What should I do? I got this problem in the city council. And I said, media. But we now have the power to embarrass, our politicians in our states because of media. And that's basically what worked for me. They had been tracking me for at least 8 months of everything I did, from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to the LA Times. And when they heard I was going to TED, it was like, okay, somebody needs to call him, and they're like, hey, we love what you're doing and we love your success. And I'm like, what success? It's like, it ain't like I'm making a living doing this. It's like, oh, we heard you going to TED. I'm like, I'm at TED right now. I'll holler at you. And I hung up the phone at the councilman's office. And it just pissed me off because they hadn't called me in probably 6 to 8 months. They hadn't returned any phone calls because they found out that I had did this, some years before. So they were just gonna throw me under the bus. So, but it's a beautiful thing. I didn't expect that to happen. But yeah, policy can be good and policy can be bad. But I think we as citizens need to realize how much power we hold. And we also need to realize that there's people that don't have the same kind of existence that other people have in this city and in this world, and that needs to be taken into account. I'm sure you guys know about all of these suicides that's happening now, with everybody, and I think a lot of it is because of this, what we're putting out here, your worth, your value. So you got these kids killing themselves because they don't see their worth, they don't see their value. You got old people, that's losing their homes and they're still to this day, and so I'm not gonna be homeless. So, you got seniors killing themselves, because of this bullshit mortgage fraud, that we deal with, that's still in effect, and people think it's over and it's not, so, and there needs to be policy, but it needs to be something that, policy that affects everybody, and not just wealthy white men, and we got them writing the laws that benefit them, and they got this new thing that's happening, is this opportunity zones. Anybody know about the opportunity zones? If you don't, you should. It's going to be one of the biggest land grabs, money grabs in history, as we know it, and where they're supposed to come into these underserved communities and build them up, so they get massive tax credits and different things. But the thing about it, they're going to bring their companies in, and since they brought their company in, they need to bring their people in to work at their company, and it's going to change the value of these neighborhoods. They're not, and it's not a shared economy. You're giving, see, people think, oh, we're creating jobs. You're creating jobs. You're not creating wealth. There's a big ass difference between you creating jobs and creating wealth. They know that, but most people don't. They think, oh, I got a job, and yeah, you're a worker, and period is basically what happens, and that's the, there's enough for everybody, and so no, and I get this. I've just left a conference, this week, and that's all they were talking about. But nobody that lives in an opportunity zone was at this conference. Other people are going to be affected. So it's that. So yeah, policy does, but we need to we need to stand up more, and we don't realize the power that we have, and that's what we need to install in kids. But also these kids, they go home to these things called adults, and a lot of times they get to school, they're adults, but you have these kids you have these adults that ain't trying to hear it, so it's vast,
Can I just do a quick comment? I think it's really fascinating that you called out this dynamic in how we create change is this ingredient of embarrassment. And I think that that's really powerful if you think about all of the embarrassing things that could be called out when you call truth to power. And that's something I think I'm going to practice more. See those windows of embarrassment to call that change.
What happens, what happens?
Yes.
It seems like it's echoing here. What happens is we are, need to be politically correct, and we need to dress, we go somewhere, we have to dress to fit. I'm not trying to fit in. I'm not trying to be you. You know what I'm saying? I'm being authentic to who I am. And that's the happen. You're not supposed to say this. You're not supposed to do this. That's your world, dude. It's not mine. So we go into places, especially being of color, and try to fit in. I ain't trying to fit in. So I think, and that's why it's so easy. I'm not here for your money. I'm not here for that. I'm here. I'm as real as it's gonna get. And that's so. And I'm not being bought. I had these companies. I've had the Subways come. I had the Scotts come to me. I had all this, like, hey, like, no, dude, you got the same ingredients in yoga mats in your bread. Let's change that. So it's like, and they think everybody want to be famous, and everybody want to be out there, and everybody want to be on TV. Here, stand next to my product. No. And I think that's where we lose it. We keep trying to fit in. To what? To their world, the world that they made. So with that, you have to follow their guidelines. And we need to design our own world. We need to design, no, you follow mine, And that's why our culture gets lost. It's because of that. All of a sudden, and my kids are Mexican, so all of a sudden, your name is not Roberto anymore, it's Robert, and it's not Valle, it's Valley. And it's like fit in. I ain't trying to fit in. That's like that's why the Destination Crenshaw project, the tag, what we operated from was the tagline for the show, unapologetically black, period. And so I said, no, this is so black you can't see your hand in the dark black. It's blackity black, black, black. It's like, damn, that's black. That's this project because we're celebrating black LA. On this mile and a third, and that's where we come from. So, and that's what we need to do. I'm tired of our culture being ripped and used, and we don't benefit from it. So it's easy for me to be authentic.
I hear that. A lot of what I heard, it was really just like what it means to be assimilating for us as, people coming into this country specifically, and then just kind of almost erasing our history. And I saw that I've seen that. I'm guilty of that growing up predominantly in a Mexican community. So then it's something that's real in every culture. So I'm kind of interested leading to that question of like, we're assimilating, and where does that put us in the level playing or in a playing field? And then Ron, talking to you or hearing you say about how, we don't all have the same opportunities. Everyone in the city, South Los Angeles compared to West Los Angeles, the number of grocery stores, the accessibility of healthy food is insanely different compared to South LA, East LA, the west part of just downtown Los Angeles, Pico Union, Westlake community. They don't have access to healthy food. So I'd like to hear more about food equity, food inequity, and like what does that mean, and how do we shape the future? How do we talk about, talk with students that are still shaping themselves? How do we stop them from leading this direction where they are assimilating or they want to because that's just what's popular, or just not knowing, or just being bombarded with a lot of ads that tell you how you should be living your life. How would we, I don't know if there's a question in there, I'm trying to be organic, so I'm trying to like lead to something, is how do we, this is kind of all around food inequity or equity, or how do we reach equity? Can we even get there? Is it accessible? I know inequity is real where we live, and basically inequity means is one community not having access to opportunities that another community has for a lot of different reasons, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's their background, who they are, what language they talk, they discuss, or whatever. So I don't know if I have a question, but I'd like to keep this going because I like where this is going. So who would want to start that?
Sure. Unless one of you two feel. Okay. So I think what the question I'm going to answer is, well, I don't know. I'll share my thoughts. I think food is foundational to existence. I think that the foundation of food, however, we individually need to have a journey to understanding the history of food personally. So for me, that means that a lot of what we hear about Latinos, Central Americans, Salvadorans is that we eat poorly. That is a lie. That is something that we've been fed to believe. My ancestors created masa. Who here enjoys tortilla chips or tortillas? Show of hands. Okay, my ancestors created that, and that's why we can enjoy it. It is a healthier food than some other foods out there. Depends on how you cook it, or if you fry it, there's a whole nother thing there. But what that's meant for me is understanding this food history, understanding that Salvadoran cuisine, although there are meat products that came to the cuisine by way of colonization, the majority of the food is plant-based. We have a dish called panes con pollo, or panes con gallina. It is a roll that has a turkey, stewed turkey made with pumpkin seeds, chiles, several different other seeds, sesame seeds. If that roll does not have its beets, its watercress, its radishes, all these greens that we put into it, it is not a panes con pollo. Salvadoran would look at it and say, that's not a complete meal because it's missing the vegetables, because it's missing all of this other stuff. It means understanding your roots. It means understanding that an integral part of how you eat is what your ancestors have eaten. And once I started to understand that, I started to realize how that knowledge was kept from me. I started to realize how the news, even Latino news, Latinx media news, will say, you know, don't eat this thing or don't eat that thing because we Latinos are fat and gluttonous. And you realize that this is from your own community. And so you start there. You start at what is the messaging that I'm being fed already about food and how I feed and nourish myself. And I think once you start there and you sort out all of the misgivings that you've encountered about food, and you acknowledge that food is a foundational block to how you live, I think that's when you start figuring out how have I assimilated? How have I taken on an identity that is not my own and that is not serving me or my community? And I've done that by way of food, and also, you know, a lot of the foods in Salvadoran communities are native flowers. We have blossoms that are a part of our food. And my ancestors are farmers. And yet that is a identity or a name that's very there's a lot of stigma there. Oh, your relatives were farmers. You must not be educated. You must not know, you must not have this sophisticated kind of value in society. And so I think that it starts a big part of it starts there. At least it's been true in my own life.
What was the question? I know, kidding. You know, the whole assimilation thing. You mean, when you really think about it, what are you assimilating to? You know, it's like they said, we're standing on Tonga land right now. You know, where are they? Where are the Tonga? Who's anybody in here? Tonga? Anybody? You know, so when you do assimilate, what are you assimilating to? You know, what are you submitting to? You know, somebody that has raped, pillaged, and destroyed your culture, and now you're assimilating to them. What is their culture? You know, what is it? Can you? So it's a mind fuck. You know what I'm saying? So what is their culture? And all of a sudden, you know, you have a couple of white guys opening a thing called Taco Window, and it's successful in the hood, and it's like, really? You know, so it's like a lot of what we're doing is all we don't get the benefit from it. You know, from the music to the clothes to the fashion, we don't get the benefit. But so we're assimilating to what? To be accepted by who? You know, so it's amazing that they've instilled this kind of power. It's like I was saying, a lot of the prisons that we are in are self-imposed. All you have to do is take that sheath off your head and realize, oh, damn, it's a real world out here. You know, and that's what I'm trying to you know, to wake people up to with my situation, trying to get kids, trying to get even adults to grow food, to show them the magic, the alchemy that is soil, that this teeny tiny seed, you know, will turn into a tree that will give you fruit. You know, I'm in Sweden, and there's 250-year-old apple trees still giving apples. So you want to talk about a return of investment? You know, so a lot, we go back to talking about values. We don't value the soil. We don't, and so I'm trying to show kids that the resources that are in soil, and it's hard for what I do because, especially with African American kids, because of that, what was that shit called? Slavery. And so it gets real hard for them to have anything to want anything to do with. So I don't grow. I'm not growing no food. I'm not a slave. It's like, actually, you are a slave if you don't grow food. You know, it's the same thing with dealing with Latino kids, the migrant farm workers. So a lot of these kids have these horror stories. You know, they grew up in the Central Valley or somewhere, and their parents went from farm to farm. And as soon as they learned how to walk, they were out in that field, you know, been over in the field. And so they're not trying to get to it. But my whole thing is like, okay, imagine if you own the land. And that's what we don't see. Imagine if that was your land and you get to work it and you get to profit from what comes out of it. And that's the change. That's what we have to do. You know, show kids that worms, that everything that comes from nature, everything that comes from this planet is a resource. You know, is an opportunity. It's not no damn hope. It's a resource. So if we get to them with that and realize, like, okay, you got these, I'm telling kids, start a worm farm. Like, worms, what the hell? I say, yes, because you give them your trash, your refuge, and they turn it into worm castings, worm poop, black gold, but they also turn it into something else, worm tea. All of these things have value that you can sell. You know, so, and nobody else is in your neighborhood doing it, so you got an open market. And to show them that kind of value. And then you also get worms because they're having so much sex. You know, that you got to sell, so you're selling worms, worm castings, and worm tea out of one thing. So these are the kind of mechanics that I'm trying to put into work with these kids to realize, because my whole thing, if you see one thing differently, you might judge everything. So it's like I'll ask, like, what are cities designed for? Anybody know? What are cities designed for? Somebody tell me. Anybody? No? No, not at all. Huh? Ding, 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 ding. Cities are designed for commerce, period. It's like nothing else. They're not, and I'm at an architect school in Atlanta, and I posed this question and nobody answered. They were like, you guys, what the hell is that? Is that a trick question? No, it's not. And the professor, she wound up saying people, like, duh, of course cities are designed for people. I'm like, wrong, not even close. And I said, she's gonna teach you guys that because that's what she was taught when she went to school, and it's the wrongest thing. Cities are not designed for people, they're designed for commerce. And we are basically worker ants. That's why we came to the city. It's like you think about the grid, the streets. It's like it's all the cars and everything else have more opportunity and more leeway than we do. And if you knew that, you would realize that we live in a built environment. Can we build it where it's more humanistic? Can we build it where it's more people-centric? Hell yeah, we can. Is it? No, it's not. So, and that's part of what my whole Parkway thing started. It's like, I want to walk out my house and I want to see beauty. I want to see. I don't want to see the toilet somebody left, or the couch, or the cigarettes, butts, or the condoms, or the refrigerator on my Parkway. I want to come out and I want to have hummingbirds singing in my ears and butterflies, flying on my head. That's what I want to see, and that's what happened when I put this garden in. So we have the opportunity. Everybody in here is a designer. We have the opportunity to change that. So again, that's assimilation, because we're assimilating to this built environment. We think since there's grass and everybody has it, we're supposed to have grass. No, dude, I want some corn. So that's my thing. So assimilating to what's happened, the status quo. No, the status quo is not working for everybody. It works for you. So that's where I come from.
When I think about assimilation, I think about what our kids are assimilating to. And I think about what we're doing at MUSE School. And there are a few of us out in the audience, and I think about Alexis and Rick, and there are teachers who work with our students and what they're doing with our 2-year-olds and our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds and then our 18-year-olds. We have a student here who went to Panama back in February to, look at the rainforest. So for me, we're talking about food and food history and assimilation and equity and inequity. And I forgot to mention that we have someone here also who digs in our trash can at school, because there are things that we can take out of the trash can and we can use in the classroom, or we can take and we can sell online. And I think about sustainability, and I think about the environment, and we know that our climate is in a crisis right now. We know that. And so we're talking about these things that are so important, and I want to talk about the environment and food, and we teach our kids that eating one plant-based meal a day for the planet, and these 2-year-olds and these 3-year-olds are learning this. They're learning how to dig in the dirt. They're learning with Rick and Alexis. They're learning these things about equity, and Alexis is taking students to homeless places where the kids can teach people how to eat well, and it's baby steps. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. But once again, it's going to start with the kids, it's going to start with them. And what we want is to be able to empower the children, the students, to make these changes. And it goes back to food, and it goes back to growing. And it's simple, it's not something that's hard, because clearly you could do it in a street and get in trouble and get arrested or almost arrested, and but then people love it, and then you're doing TED Talks. And so it's something. I know, right? Yeah. So I think that's where I come from when I start thinking about that, and just the people in the lives of children and what we can do to make that happen. We've been around for 13 years, and we know now that when we are, like I said earlier, doing the 1 meal a day for the planet, the kids are saving water. You know, they're learning that when they eat one plant-based meal a day for the planet, that they're putting a fan on the planet. You know, they're putting a fan to kind of cool the planet. When they eat 2 plant-based meals a day, they're putting a fan that has a stronger, you know, what's the word I'm looking for when a fan goes around? Anyway, so it's just thinking about it like that, you know, and again, empowering the kids and making them aware. Because again, we're the adults and we're sitting up here and saying, this is what we should do. But the kids are they're gonna save us, so.
Your school is an anomaly. Come on, give me a break. I mean, anybody that's not in MUSE School know anything about MUSE School? I mean, these kids, it's ridiculous. You know, they get up, okay, what do you want to study today? Race cars! And guess what? They go out and they study race cars, whatever. I mean, it's like, my kids went to UES, and I wanted to go to school there. Once I wanted a do-over. I asked them, I raised my hand at the orientation, and I said, can I have a do-over? What do you mean? I want to start here. Because if I went to school here, I'd be a beast. There is a difference in learning, you know, and what you learn in these systems is, LA Unified and the rest of them, is standardized education.
We've been doing it for over 100 years the same way.
It's bullshit, and they know it don't work. You know, so to go to a school like MUSE, I mean, and you're right, no, it shouldn't be, you guys, it should be everywhere. And it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be up in the hills like that hidden, and it should be the teachings, the lessons, and my whole thing is like, the school should be in the garden, not the garden at the school. You know, so these kids should be outside. They shouldn't be locked in to this and learning shit that they'll never use in their life. I mean, they're giving these kids real world stuff at very early age. I mean, just imagine if you knew how to read the stock market when you were 5 years old. You know, how your life would change. You know, when somebody said, you know, the S&P today is such an, you know, imagine if I don't even know what that is. So imagine if you were raised and you knew really what was happening around you. So, you know, and it's sad because I've gone to the same school, you know, all my life. And then now I talk in schools trying to show these kids, trying to teach these kids that you have value, and it goes beyond money. You know, money has no money. Your tennis shoe. I said, think about all the stuff that you value is stuff that you buy. It's not buying you. You know, you are the most precious, the most worthy, the most expensive, you know, the most precious thing on this planet, not that stuff around you. So, but we got kids killing each other over a pair of tennis shoes, you know, silly shit like that. So, and I was at one point, I was in a woman's prison here in California, about 2 hours outside of LA, and you know, 2 weeks later, I'm in a grade school in Pensacola, Florida, and we're driving up to the thing. I'm like, damn, this looks just like the women's prison that I was in, and because it was the same brick, same color, the tile roof, same tile. You know, the only difference was the fence wasn't as high as the fence at the prison, and it didn't have barbed wire. And I went in, and so it's like you had to be checked to get in. You had to go through the metal detector. It's an elementary school, and so it was designed the same. They had this big circle, and they ate the food. It was like a multi-purpose space where it was their auditorium where they ate, assemblies and all that, and. You know, it just, that school, I mean, every time I think about it, it makes me cry, but that school, after I left, you know, I cried because I saw how brilliant these kids were, and you had teachers that were giving them more than they were legally supposed to give them, and you could tell by the questions, to have, somebody in the 4th grade ask, well, Ron, why is there good food and there's bad food too? And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to answer that? I don't so you had these kids asking these brilliant questions, and then the humanity of these kids after I spoke and come up to me, and someone would shake my hand, or someone would just leap and just hug me, and you got this little thing around you and it's hugging you. It's like, damn. So it was, I left there knowing how, some of them had made me come to their class to see what they were working on, and it was just beautiful. But I think the tears came from knowing that their light will never be able to shine. Their light, this light and how brilliant they are, they'll never ever get the opportunity to show that. And some of, these schools they have washing machines there because kids come with filthy clothes, one shoe, and their thing just want to be, and it goes back to home also. But so they have shoes there, they have clothes there, and they have a washing machine, so that they have to have this in school. And to go to a school like MUSE, to go to a school like UES, whereas that stuff's not even thought about, and people don't know that this is happening, but it's happening from one end of our coast to the other end of our coast, and it needs to be addressed,
I hear that totally. I want to just add a little bit more before we open it up to questions, just speaking on that. I think the MUSE School is a great example of a model school that I think needs to happen. For some time, I worked at Jefferson High School in South Central, off of 42nd and Central, and we worked towards working with high school students and really just showing that they have leadership in them. And I would constantly hear, if I go out in the, because we would ask them, like, let's go to these small markets, let's see what small corner stores can do to bring in healthier food options. And they would tell me, it's like, I go out there and I start walking down the street, I'm gonna get stopped by a cop. Like, it's just hearing that from high school students is hard to hear that.
What we need to add to it, there's something that's happening in the schools in South Central that can be stopped, and these kids will, this is Fighting Justice, it's a TV program they did on BT. It's really great. So in school, they have these officers that can come in this classroom at any minute. You get up, and they search you. Mm-hmm. At any time. And this doesn't grow up, it's not in Pasadena. Pasadena's only, 8 miles away, if that. And it could be stopped by one person, and he can't. So imagine that these kids are living with this anxiety that somebody's gonna, and they've done it, I think they said they searched 100,000 kids that all, to date, and they found 0 weapons, 0 drugs. And so all you're doing, every time they're doing that, they're like, they're setting these kids up, and it's some mental it's already enough that they're carrying this other baggage in their DNA, from the lineage. Now you have somebody that's still persecuted with this bullshit. And so I'm sure most of you guys don't know about that, but it's happening every day. That just imagine that you go to school and, hey, get up, and you just get searched for no reason. Exactly, counseling, and that keeps them in that state.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and open up for questions now. So if anyone has any questions.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you the micro clicks and everything.
Oh, sure. Is that getting released anytime soon, or are you going to release that, or are you just going to hang on to it?
So the plan when I first started the project was to just document them and self-publish kind of a recipe kit. eventually I realized like there's a lot more women, and so it grew to interview the 25, and I thought I'll just self-publish. Fortunately, I've met wonderful people who have wanted to help me out, and if you self-publish, you don't get reviewed by major newspapers, so the New York Times, LA Times, National Review of Books. And not that that's the end-all be-all, but that is this, what I'm creating is a resource. So I want as many people who want this to have access to it. And if you have a book and you're the only one that, they'll find, it becomes a little trickier. So I'm in the process of writing a book proposal that I am about 90% done with it. And I actually will be attending a food conference later this month where I'm hoping to find an agent, start talking to publishers, and have, because it's a lot. So, yeah. But hopefully Mother's Day 2020 has always been the day when I thought this would be great if this kind of book would be ready. So we'll see.
Any other questions?
Well, it's less of a question than an observation. I mean, thank you. When we're talking about culture and we're talking about trying to teach a younger generation, excuse my voice, I'm surviving head and neck cancer. I think it's important to recognize that there is another culture, and that's not necessarily a good thing. It's derived from commerce. Kids learn by this now. There's billions and billions of dollars that are going to deny them the learning. PlayStation, most kids will communicate via, gaming and these things that take them away from reality. And when we're talking about food and culture and how it was when we were younger and the history, let's face it, that requires work. Growing your food, preparing your food, creating your meals to nourish your family is work. When there's billions of dollars going into telling kids work is not required. I could go to a drive-through, I could walk across the street, I could go to a supermarket now and get a prepared meal. Hell, I can go online and have a company send me potatoes and green beans and rice for me to prepare that meal by their direction. So it's great to talk about educating younger people, but are we speaking their language? And are we doing it to a point that we could even minimally combat the billions of dollars that media and industries are putting into training them differently?
Thank you.
So it's the same blood that they have in China, the same blood that's running through our bodies, the same air they're breathing in Russia, it's the same air. It's even the same water. Okay, so we have that, and yeah, it's a battle, but period. I mean, everything's a fight. We're constantly we're in multiple battles when we wake up. Just imagine waking up black for a second. You want to talk about some battles so I wake up with all the other shit that you wake up with, but I also wake up with all this other. This noose that I'm dragging around. So we're all in constant battles. Does that make us stop? No, we can curb that. So no, I go to school and to these schools. What's the most important thing to life? What is the most important thing to your life? Fortnite! 450 kids, Fortnite! And then there's this one kid in the back. I said, no, seriously, what is the most important? And they're like, food, and this one kid says, oxygen? I'm like, yes, how the hell do you know that? I've asked that question from Compton to Copenhagen. And maybe 0.1 might say oxygen is the single most important. People say my family, love, happiness, my dogs. I'm like, no. oxygen, air is the single most important thing to your life. But do we have a pledge of allegiance for it? Do we? And the thing about it, oxygen is the single most important thing to your life, and you can't even see that. You know, so imagine that. You want to talk spirit, you want to talk. So these are the kind of lessons that these kids need to get to. What do you, and that's why I said, what do you value? Can we get them off these things? We have to. And can we curb these companies? There has to, again, policy. There has to be some legislation in place where we make that happen. Because you got to think, everybody, all of us, who remembers all the phone numbers that you used to remember? No, I don't even know my kids' phone numbers. Okay, so basically, we all have atrophy of our senses, of our brain, because it's just like any part of your body that you don't use. When you go to use it, if I sit my arm here for 6 months, you know what I'm saying? And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing to the kid, and that's what we're doing to ourselves. We have to curb that, period. Well, I don't see it as work. You know, it can be, but once you're in it, I mean, especially gardening, that seduces you, dude. I mean, you know, and it's like it don't become. No, and that's. And it's freedom. It's like you started with, it's culture, and that's what they're doing. They literally, everybody eats lunch at the same time at the same place, and it's all prepared right there. And these kids, they have gardens there. So imagine, I mean, they get to show these kids the magic, the alchemy of Mother Nature because just imagine you plant this seed and then it's like, I made this. That's what I made this. It's like, you're right. You can't take that away from them ever in your life. I don't care how many, they might get caught up on this, but you know, you planted not just a seed, you planted DNA in their little ass. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we have to do. And that's what their school, it should be. Those teachings, just like UES teaching, those teachings need to be everywhere. And it's a travesty. It's criminal that these kids go to school and they don't get the knowledge, not the education. They don't get the knowledge that they need. And what we have to realize, it's by design. It is. It's by design. They can change. They know what works. But just imagine, it's like, for 1 second, imagine everybody educated. Imagine everybody with knowledge. You know how disruptive that would be? Who would go to prison? Where would the worker ants come from? Who would get on the freeway during rush hour? Ain't that a rush hour? I'm sitting here, what are you talking about, rush hour? You know, who would be there? Why are everybody on the freeway at the same time everywhere? Anyway, that's by design. You know, so we can change that, and you got. Yeah, no, but we have the capacity to change that. We have the capacity, whereas to make all of this, to make it a level playing field, you know. And I do most of the talks I do. I'm basically talking to rich white folks, and usually rich white men. If I do a conference, and I tell them, it's like, most of your money comes from the middle or the bottom, okay? And you living on this top of this hill. And I said, don't you think that you should maybe take care of where your precious money comes from, since that's all you value? You don't value humanity. You value money. You value stocks and bonds and all that other. I said, so if you don't, I said, ask Marie Antoinette how that shit worked out for her. It didn't turn out that good. You know, so and they laughed, but it's like, no, I'm serious. You know, so that to me, that's where we have to be. Everything we need is already here. Now putting it in place, that's another thing. The money that they're paying these teachers, you know, it's ridiculous that that they get paid as little as they do, you know, when they should be held up in high esteem. So, I don't know. Thank you.
You guys have touched on it a little bit through some of your answers, but there's this great myth of food, lack of food. Food short, yeah. How do you guys, if you do, combat that?
There is no food shortage.
Right.
That's a fallacy.
The myth.
There's a distribution problem that they can't fix. But there is no lack of food, you know. It can be fixed. You know, the food that we leave in the fields, the food that we throw away, you know, that we have 6 in a pack and one of them has some mold on it, so you throw everything away. You know, it's waste, you know. But yeah, it's a fallacy. How do we deal with it? We have, it's like we need to address it. We need to go to the stores. We need to. Bottom line is know where your food comes from. You know, so now they have the new. I'm sure you saw it came out the other day that glyphosate. Bless you. Glyphosate does not cause cancer. Did you see that? The EPA is now saying that glyphosate. You guys know what glyphosate is? Yeah. So why? Because this will probably be the end of Bayer, who bought Monsanto as we know it. So all of a sudden that the EPA comes out with this after there's been 2 cases that's been proven that these people have cancer because of glyphosate, and they have thousands of cases waiting. So it's we're living in a place where it's corporations over humanity. You know, the corporations need to live, and humanity not so much. So, I mean, look at it. We have, you know, all the plastics, all you guys with those uterus things, you know, and your childbearing age, you've already transferred BPAs onto your unborn fetus way before you even know you're pregnant. Did you see that on the news? So it's the terrible thing about what I get to do. I get to talk to all these scientists and, you know, around the world, and it's information that you don't see nowhere. We don't get it, you know. But we pretty bad. You know, can it be fixed? Yeah. Can we clean the oceans? I don't know. You know, but can it get better? Yeah. I mean, and again, knowledge is king. And not just the knowledge, not just sitting here us talking about it, but us all getting out and doing it. That's what has to happen, you know?
I think when it comes to looking at food shortage, you also have to talk about food waste. And some of the practical things that I've implemented in my life is that I don't need as much food in my home. How many of you have fridges? How many of you have actually looked at what's in your freezer all the way at the end? You don't need that there. We don't need big fridges. I've actually been wanting to buy one of those small little college fridges because that is what fits there is what could feed a family of 3. With a few grains, with a few veggies that you have that actually ripen and they'll be good when you eat them instead of tossing it because you didn't get to it because you got too much. You know, we're used to big Costco trips with the big, giant things. And this isn't something just, I'm saying because it'd be great. These are things that are implemented by people who I'm forgetting his name. He's the New York Times food writer. David, is that Bittman? No, it's not Bittman. No. This is David, forget his last name, but that is, that's what he does. And he, okay. You don't have to get what you don't want. However, the point is that we have too much food in our fridges. And who drives the demand? The consumer. If we are buying bigger fridges with more shelves and all of this access, you need food to make it look pretty, right? I mean, I think that's even a trend in Instagram to take a picture of your fridge. Oh, I know you all want to see what I'm eating this week. So, those are things that are a part of the culture, right? So some of these things, like we've mentioned on the panel, are a part of the environment, right? And so having big fridges means you need a big grocery bill. We don't need it. You need about 3 different grains, especially if you're eating plant-based. A lot of these things are shelf stable, and you go to the store, every week, you buy what you need that's fresh. And I think that's how we start shifting.
But you stuck on the freeway during rush hour.
Well, I would like to do a shout out to the 2 people that really make some amazing things happen at MUSE, and that's Alexis and Rick. And, they are teaching our kids about food waste. And, we compost. So the kids, again, these little 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds are going home and saying, Mommy, Daddy, or Mommy, Daddy, whoever their parents are, where's our compost? Where's our compost? We've got one at school. And so the idea, again, is educating, is knowledge, is awareness. And yeah, our school is small. We have 200 kids there, 220 kids. And the idea is to make more schools like that so that we are teaching young children how to combat this idea around food shortage, around food waste, and how they can become activists and how we can get them to galvanize and come together and do something different than what we're doing. So I applaud these 2 because they're making magic happen at MUSE.
One more question.
I just want to applaud you guys for talking about unknowing assimilation when you're a kid and eating. Like you were talking about eating pickled onions and carrots and stuff like that. I always trade stories with a lot of my diverse friends about their cafeteria moment where they bring something that they made from home or their mom made from them, and then when everyone takes out what they have for lunch, and everybody has Lunchables, and you have maybe sticky tofu, or you have pancit, or you have albondigas or something, and everybody would be like, ew, what's that? They pretty much they mean what you're eating, and it's no, this is really good, and you can't have a rational explanation with little kids. So the next week, everybody just has all Lunchables. What kind of Lunchable do you have now? You have pizza, you have this, you have that. So I think you unknowingly go away from what's strange or what's different. And I think it's not a lot of people hear that kind of conversation. Now it's starting to be in a narrative and it's getting agency. But it's really cool when you see people touch on that now. You don't realize it now. That's it. Oh, thank you.
It's a ESMoA oldie. Yeah, maybe.
So you were talking about the chickens and the chicken farm, the store, but so our school is vegan, but in Panama there's this tribe called indigenous tribe called the Kuna people, and one of them said to me, they're like, you vegans basically insult us for eating meat, and but they're not meat that we get from the same way you do. So, but you guys are trying to tell us how to eat while we're farming this ourselves. These are our cattle. So, if that is a cultural thing, but is that something that could be not because I don't know how to phrase this. The farms that are basically I feel like just as bad as any corporation with meat production or poultry or fish or anything. Is that something that can be changed, do you think?
If I'm understanding your question, is about whether smaller farms can, you kind of see the similar pattern of discrepancies that you see with these larger farms, and can there ever be like a better way of farming?
When we first went plant-based at the school, the big question was, and not just about the school and about our kids there, but around the world, and how do you encourage people to go plant-based or even just one meal a day? Because culture's so strong, and how do you take away people's thinking around eating as it relates to their history? And I don't have the answer. I think it's difficult. I do think that there is an ability to do it in a way that, again, is baby steps.
Sure. I think that is a very complicated question. So I'll just share my thoughts. I think that a vegan lifestyle always is led by a very personal why. And eating is very personal. When we talk about taking away certain ingredients because this is what's healthier and this is what's not, again, you have to ask yourself, well, why do we have beef products? In Salvadoran food, we didn't used to eat beef. That came by way of colonization. So those ingredients started to have more value, knowing what to do with all of this bounty that a cow gave you. Having milk, you could do butter, you could have cheese. These were the things that farmers had that were accessible. It provided a livelihood. So when you taint this cow now as something that's bad, you're actually really doing a huge emotional injustice, because that is their livelihood. This is how they can survive, provide for their family. And so when you talk about a bigger, how do we get people to be plant-based? Honey, they were already plant-based. We all have very plant-based beginnings. And from my own worldview and my perspective, I think veganism is a very noble pursuit. I don't think that everyone can be, should be, will be. And I'm okay with that because I grew up hearing stories of my mom say that all they were eating were beans, corn, squash, and mangoes that grew on the farm. And the wealthier folks, the patrones, the patronas, who were in charge of the farm, who gave them the jobs, were the ones that were eating steak. They were eating liver. They were eating all these delicious things. And what they gave to the kids of the workers was they would take tortillas that they had freshly made, and they would rub them on the pan, these huge pans that they would cook the meat in. And that's what they would give my mom. And so she saw it as this classist thing, as this social inequity, that you get to eat the meat, I get to eat the flavor of the meat. Okay, so meat is meat, and all these ingredients have, like I said, very politicized. There's violence in all of our life, in what we eat. And, I take issue with some vegans sometimes because they, one, for instance, I live a very, what's the word that's used? Compassionate lifestyle, I think. I don't want to have violence in my life or something like that. But yet their favorite show is Game of Thrones. So what you consume comes by what you eat, what you see, what you think about your neighbor. So I think that the conversation is large, and it's unjust it has a history of being unjust to people who need the most support. So I think that you come as a learner, and you come as someone who wants to learn more to see where are the gaps, how can I fill them with my skill set that I have available to me right now.
Any other, I feel like I wanted to say, but you said everything that I was thinking too. I think it's really important to not impose, I guess, the way that you think is the right way to someone else who might say something differently, especially culturally, because like Karla said, there is just a lot of history. I have family that currently has their own, a couple of cattle. Like they don't own a whole farm. It's literally like in a forest in El Salvador where they probably have three cattle, and that just provides some of the dairy products that they themselves make at home. And you know, they have their own set of animals that they raise and graze, and they choose to eat, and it's part of their livelihood. And yeah, it's I think the farming also, in some aspects, being that small, is also very different in the US. Like my parents, they're actually what is considered transnational citizens, I guess. They spend half of their time in El Salvador, and then they spend a couple of months here with us, because my parents have always said, they want to die in their country. They want to die. They came here undocumentedly, of course, you know, applied for a political asylum, came over, and that was approved. And so now they just make sure to go back. And the one thing they try to stay away from is meat in the US, because of how processed it is, and because how there's just so much business behind meat that you eat in the US, even if you go to a chicken farm locally. So that's something that, and then my family has diabetes. Like that's like a very strong, most of my aunts, I have at least 2 aunts that have died from a heart attack at about 50 years old, which is considerably young for a heart attack. So they have this feeling about eating meat here, but they will gladly eat meat in El Salvador because they know exactly what that cow has eaten, or pork, or whatever it is. They know exactly what's gone into that. And so I think that's where it's different. It's I would understand maybe the culture in Panama where they're saying, you know, we are raising our cattle or our meat to eat certain food, so they know exactly what's going into their body. But then, it goes back to a more cultural and even very political reality in the U.S. Just my 2 cents. Any other? Any other questions? Or are we closing up?
So there's Manhattan and Redondo, and we're part of a program called Blue Zones. I don't know if you know about it. It would be interesting for you to look into it. It is teaching plant-based. It is educating. It is giving us opportunities for our families and children and markets within our area to become plant-based and become part of the Blue Zones program. Also restaurants as well. They'll even give you 10% off at these restaurants to encourage you to eat plant-based food. So as I'm sitting here, I hope that might interest some of you to take a look at, I think it's Dan Butner who's written the books on the Blue Zones, and we were very fortunate to get it. We, the 3 cities were joined together, and this must be 6 or 8 years that this is going on, and we got a grant out of all the cities in the country to start this program, and then it's just been kept going on with people that are now volunteering. And also they have additional things that are not part of food, but mindfulness, that's another thing, and having a purpose in your life. So there's all of the things that you people have been talking about, but in a different way maybe of looking at it. So as I'm sitting here, I just had to say something. Yes?
not something that Dan Buettner talks about as far as you have to do it like this, and that there's room for variety, and it's not always having to be plant-based, but that meat and fish is okay in small amounts. I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's a beautiful way, an approach to life that he has coined the term and studied it, and yeah, thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, community. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Karla. Thank you, Alba, so much for being my co-conspirator.